Hello, this is Aruna Narayanan, the founder and chief impact enabler of Real Impact. It's a pleasure to be here on the show, Voices of the Future with Tariq. And what he's trying to create here is absolutely interesting in terms of gathering so many unique and different voices and amplify what the future is going to look like. So very, very happy to do our little part in this beautiful journey and hope Voices of the Future becomes a movement as Tariq envisions it. And we look forward to creating a collective, positive, and real impact together.
One of the things that is closest to my heart and really is going to impact our life is our planet, is the beautiful planet that we're living on. Climate change, sustainability, all of the issues around the environment are so critical in our lives at this moment in time. So anybody who's doing something about it, I have utmost and immediate respect for them. And today we have Aruna with us. She is the sector lead at our Harvard Business School Sustainability Initiative, also from Cambridge. She's looking after many, many companies here, guiding them on sustainability, giving them a view, giving them a vision in terms of what needs to be done. And we're going to talk about all of that today. Aruna, welcome. Good to see you today.
Thank you.
Lovely
Pleasure
to have you.
Be here. Yes.
Aruna, since I've met you, we've had a lot of interesting conversations. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you came from, what's the Harvard-Cambridge connection, as we move forward into discussing sustainability and depth of what is happening in climate change.
So just to, give a snapshot into how life looked in the past couple of years. So I started out my career about 22 years back. And I always used negative screening in life. So I always knew what I did not want to do. So then the paths kind of opened and it was obvious. So I was always kind of averse to math and science. So I said, okay, maybe it's communications. And I kind of went into that route. Started my career in marketing, communications, managing client experiences. And during that time, the sector that was booming was tech, IT, outsourcing, BPO, and that's the industry I worked on and learned the basics of working in a corporate setup, how communication matters, how you can communicate for impact, and sitting in on customer complaints and sometimes just really drafting the email right gets you the right responses. So through my jobs, I realized the power of communications and people connections in resolving issues. And one thing led to another, worked in various consulting firms, heading the marketing, and landed up in Dubai 12 years back. And when I started looking out, obviously we all trained to look at our familiar zones, right? We always want to go into a realm that we know. And I got invited for an interview at a waste management company. And I'm like, should I even show up or not? And I was like, you know what, let me just go and take a look. It was in one of the industrial areas in Dubai. And having sat in consulting offices in tall towers in downtown, and you kind of go into this quaint little warehouse looking place in the industrial area, I'm like, asking myself, why am I even here? But I think that was one of the best decisions I could have ever taken because that opened up my path into what I'm doing right now, which is sustainability. That's not how I imagined it to be. It didn't have the label at that time. But really starting to work more closer to ground, right, with real people, with real problems, from the ivory tower world of consulting, kind of opened a really interesting path. And unknowingly, my journey into sustainability began about 12, 15 years back. And I've never had to look back after that. And every time when we look back at career crossroads and when you made right choices, I think when I look back, that's probably the best professional decision I would have made in terms of taking up that job. And that gave me the chance to work very closely with communities, look at waste as an opportunity and not as a problem, because till then for me waste was just a bin. I never
Yes,
bothered
100%.
what happens after I put something in
It's
there.
not a very sexy industry. I mean, what are
it's
you
not.
doing? I mean, you're cleaning waste.
But I could work with communities and go and speak to students and colleges about awareness on simple things like what goes into what bin. Got to engage with people from ministerial level up to the maid in a villa in Jumeirah who is actually sorting it, right? So the entire value chain. And that kind of gave me the aha moment saying, you know what, I'm enjoying this. This doesn't seem like work. We used to do a lot of campaigns over weekends, and I used to, drag my little one with me, but it never seemed like work. And I'm like, what, maybe I'm on the right track because work doesn't seem like work. And in one of those career crossroads moment is when, Harvard happened. And I think doing the Harvard Business School PLD program was one of the best gift I could have given myself, more than anything else I would have bought for myself ever, because I think the Harvard journey for me began once my program ended. And on the last day, they, kind of put that question in big, bold font saying, how are you a leader who makes a change? How are you going to create the impact? And honestly, if you take that question seriously, it's dangerous.
Yes.
Because it can just lead you to challenge status quo. It can lead you to question your choices. And it can lead you to push yourself out of the comfort zone, which is not always comfortable, right? So that's a bit of how it unfolded. I promised my family I'm done with studying, 400 case studies at Harvard, promise no more studies. And I came back and I realized, you know what, if I'm going to embrace sustainability, I need to become a student again. And that's when kind of took the bag again, and this time chose to do a program in Cambridge because they have robust programs in sustainability. So went back to studying really. And that was my biggest learning, saying you can never stop being a student. You can never know enough, and never be scared to change career paths. So that's a bit of how I landed up here, and now as the founder of Real Impact, and we have no designations Real Impact. We are all impact enablers. So I'm in a space where kind of I'm formalizing the whole journey, and it's about creating impact and real impact, and that's how Real Impact was born.
It's amazing. I love your story, and I'm also a Harvard alum like you. And the program that I did, one of the statistics that comes out of it, that 40% of the people either leave their jobs or leave their spouse.
Yes. So the spouse is still there. The job is not.
So it's quite interesting because as we come out, we're asking ourselves the big questions. How do I make a difference? What can I do to do something relevant in my life?
Right.
How can I make that impact? And those are precisely the questions I asked. And I have also moved off and meandered into crazy new things and actually genuinely making a difference in my heart. I'm doing that. So you mentioned the word sustainability several times, and I think we need to get the definition of sustainability. But before I go there, I'll step back. When I present on sustainability, and you've seen some of one of my presentations, there are two statements I use always. The first one is green is the new digital. In other words, 10 years ago, everything in digital was a department. Today, it's right front and center. And everything we see through digital.
True.
Green at the moment is still a department. It's still a function. It's still an initiative. It's still a CSR project.
True.
As long as green does not become the new digital, we don't have a future. These are my statements. And correct me if I'm wrong and agree with me if I'm right. The second one is even more powerful because it uses your exact word. The sustainability must be more profitable than existing business.
True.
Otherwise, it'll only be a CSR project.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we can try and feel good about ourselves and tick a few boxes and look good in our PR campaigns and so on, and can come home and tell our kids that we did something good. So these are my two statements. Green is the new digital and sustainable is the new profitable. What are your thoughts?
One is right and one needs a bit of tweaking.
Okay. From the experts, I'm happy to listen to you.
As I said, I'm the enabler, and it's just about, and these definitions keep changing.
Yeah.
So there's nothing which is cast in stone. And usually when people ask me, Aruna, what is sustainability, right? Usually for some of the companies, I run campaigns which are called decoding sustainability, because it's important to understand what it is before you start working on it.
Easy, yeah.
So I think at a very 50,000 feet macro level, sustainability is simply the ability to sustain. Right. So there's nothing more, there's nothing less. It's your ability to sustain. And this applies to an individual. This applies to a small enterprise. This applies to a corporate. This applies to an MNC. This applies to a country. The ability to sustain. Now, what do you need to sustain? Now, when we do interactive sessions, with different types of people, and I've probably conducted these sessions for thousands of people, and I've collated the responses. We ask them what are the components of a happy life for you? What do you need? So, if I can become the interviewer for a bit, and I ask Tariq, Tariq, tell me a couple of things which are needed for Tariq to have a happy life.
I need good health.
Okay.
I need a work environment which gives me comfort and happiness.
Okay.
I need friends, family, and loved ones who can give me that need and comfort that I seek.
Right.
These three.
So I think you have kind of made my job much easier. So whenever I ask these questions, we get a lot of responses. So some people say fast car, vacation, shopping, good health, good food. If you categorize all of this, they all fit under three pillars: health, wealth, relationships. That's exactly what you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Good health, a job which is kind of keeps the bills paying, it equates to wealth, and people, relationships. Sure. Now, if any of these goes a bit off balance, life isn't as beautiful.
True.
Right? So a lot of money with no health and no relationships, or vice versa.
100% right. Yeah.
Now zoom out and apply the same concept to an organization. You're making a lot of money, but you're destroying the environment. Let's say you are a company which relies a lot on water as your raw material, right? To make a profit in the short term, you're drawing up all your resources without thinking of the long term, without the sustainability of your business. You're basically going to collapse when the water runs out. Similarly, if you have the right people, you're taking great care of your people, you're planting a lot of trees, taking care of the environment, but your bank balance is zero, you're going to go kaput. So sustainability is not CSR. Sustainability is the ability to sustain. Sustainability is enjoying today without compromising tomorrow. And the three pillars that hold it is health, wealth, and relationships. Within an organization perspective is people, planet, and prosperity, not profit. Prosperity is making money which does good, and not just profit for the sake of profit. So I think this is a more holistic approach of looking at sustainability, and it appeals to every individual upwards, up to the country, up to our planet, the ability of the planet to sustain. So in a way, this is what sustainability is. It's sector agnostic, it's universal. The finer details may change, from an apparel company to a coffee shop to a bank to a government, the finer details may change, but it's your ability to sustain. So it's not just green. And the other point which you made, which is absolutely valid, is it helps the business become more resilient and become more prosperous, so that the funds can flow through the business into the right initiatives, which are relevant for the business. It's not just, doing and running a business in a certain way and then just going and cleaning up a beach and saying, I have saved the planet. It's about doing things which are relevant, and in a sustained way. So that's how,
Can we
we
go
look at
into
it.
a valley, into a chasm for a few minutes before we come out
Sure.
on a more positive note? The amount of single-use plastics that we have at this moment in time is just getting so out of hand. Literally, it can fill an ocean, one of the oceans. So that's our single-use plastic, but we use it every single day, and we are desensitized to it almost. So that's one way. Another one is looking at power and greed of organizations, particularly looking at the oil sector. They knew 40 years ago exactly what's going to happen. They kept on burning fuel, and yeah, it's very nice to have the three pillars. They really didn't care about one of the pillars because it's somebody else's problem. It's not mine. The same industry has got $5 trillion worth of assets sunk into seas and deserts and so on, extracting combustible energy. So that's not going to. You are now talking to them about a $5 trillion investment that they've already made. And the third one, I feel, is that the world and all of the organizations that were set up in the world, United Nations, World Bank, WHO, IMF, all of them were created about 80, 90 years ago in the 1940s for a problem 90 years ago, for a solution for 90 years. Now they've tried to adjust and amend a little bit. They're just not ready enough, capable enough, good enough, smart enough, careful enough, conscious enough, aligned enough to be able to build the future. So as far as I'm concerned, the companies want money and profit. We are getting desensitized because we want things cheaper, better, faster, easier. And the organizations and the world is not quite ready to handle all of this. This to me seems like a recipe for disaster. All three pillars are broken down. Please help.
So I try to look at it from a perspective of hope.
No, I am a very positive, hopeful person,
Yeah.
but I'm intentionally being provocative because this is something that is staring in our face.
Absolutely.
But we constantly want you've just done it. Precisely what I am concerned with, because I constantly do it, is I reflect from this into hope. I reflect on this into opportunity. I reflect into this into solutions, because we are very solution-oriented people. But what I am saying right now is, if we look at our institutions, and our trust level is extremely low. If we look at our company, greed level is extremely high and action level is very low. And in terms of our people on a day-to-day basis, as long as things is cheap and drinks are here and plastic is there, why are we changing?
Absolutely.
And we're not changing. So we have inertia. All of the three are human emotions. None of them is changing.
Yeah.
And that's part of my problem, because I'm a hopeful person and I want to find a way out of this.
So I think we have to acknowledge the problem, and we are, as a generation, in the transition phase between what the future needs to look like and what was done in the past. This is the generation which is probably bearing the brunt of it, and also having the key to change the way future is going to look. So as is, if we look at it, the situations are exactly what you described in terms of people and the companies' greed levels being at a certain level, and being, I would say, a little insensitive to what's happening around. That's because, and if I can take the liberty to say that, the kind of communities we live in is a very privileged setup. We haven't...
No, we are privileged here. I mean,
Yeah.
that's here in Dubai, but Dubai is not the world. It's a microcosm.
So we've not... If I can speak about what's happening here and then take it out to the world, I don't think a lot of us have experienced personally any of these. We've only experienced the good side of life. Now, let's say, if I can again wear the hat of the interviewer, when was the last time you actually felt hungry?
Regularly, because I'm doing intermittent fasting.
So-
I'm just joking. No, but you're right.
So,
hunger as in hunger with despair. Hunger
Yeah.
not knowing when
when
my
you
next
when
meal.
your next
Yeah,
meal,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So honestly, while as much as I speak about sustainability, I haven't experienced a lot of the problems or situations,
Yeah.
right? So what you have experienced, you cannot solve.
True. I learned from one of our last conversations, where you go into a boardroom and you switch off the air conditioning.
So that's experience.
Perhaps I should have switched off the air conditioning, sweating away while having this conversation. I'm
Exactly.
serious. That would have been authentic. Maybe I should.
we always sit in comfortable environments, and it's because at that time we are only narrating and describing the problem in words.
Yeah.
We haven't experienced it.
100% right.
We haven't experienced the loss. Today, you go to a shopping market, you do have a plastic bag available. You just have to pay maybe extra to get it. So we do live in a privileged setup. So it's very difficult to explain this. But as I told you, when I do some of the sessions, I actually move the water bottles out. So basically for 2 hours, you don't have water accessible to you. The temperature is set not at 24, which is a comfortable temperature. It's set at 26, which is still a comfortable temperature, without informing the execs in the room. And like you see, within 10 minutes, they're all, kind of looking around, getting restless. And we're sitting here and talking about climate change. So I think we have to accept certain facts. There are assets which are invested. There are people who are working in these fields, and you can't turn off the engine overnight and pull the plug off. Because today, let's say there's a lobby of let's all switch to EV. Yes, let's all do it. But do we have the capacity today to just turn off our existing infrastructure and switch on to something new? So I think while there's the problem, which we cannot ignore, this is the transition phase. And that, I would say, leading into your whole theme of Voices of the Future, it's about what this transition phase can do. Being hopeful, yet looking at the problem in its eye, and not just being optimistic, but being realist, focusing on the present and creating the future from now. And, start looking at problems at a micro level within your sphere of influence.
Sure.
Because when we magnify the problem, what usually happens is it's too big for your head to comprehend. And you feel, okay, this is too big for me. It's someone else's problem. But if you bring it down, then
but
it's more
as
manageable.
as an observer, as a part, a global citizen, I see the Paris Accord. I see the COP engagement. I see various other initiatives. Talk shops, sadly. I think they mean well. I think their intentions are good. Their heart's in the right place. You go to the World Economic Forum, and I've been there, Davos, people flying in their jets and things like that as billionaires, and they're already completely obliterating the environment, and they come in and talk about environment to feel good. So there's a lot of disingenuousness that is out there, and there's a bit of hypocrisy.
But there's also a lot of people, I would say, who are on ground, working on meaningful initiatives, not being worried about the PR and media, but just doing the right things. And I think that's where the real action is happening. And there is a lot of action happening in that space. So,
and I think people like you and I need to find a way to amplify that and to bring that, and perhaps use Voices of the Future as a platform and to do that.
Absolutely.
And you kindly volunteered to encourage some of the young youth negotiators that are coming in, and who are coming in from islands that we don't know,
right?
And indigenous populations that you don't recognize, but
we've never heard their stories because unfortunately, we all live in a world that's created by media, so we only know what's being shown to us. How would you know what's happening somewhere which is probably meaningful, which is an impressive on-ground initiative creating the real impact, but no one is talking about it because there's no media value. So I would not allow the narrative of what's being projected to leaders into believing what the world is, because at the end of the day, we are so diverse. So while we look at the problem in the eye, our focus should be on within our little sphere of influence, how can we create the impact?
One of the things which also upsets me is when I look at politics, and especially in large Western democratic countries. Forget the Eastern ones, we'll look at that in a second. So look at the United States. One party is denying climate change, which is 50% of the population almost, or 45% of the population. In our world today, how can we see sensible, smart people saying, what climate change? Presidential candidates are standing up there and saying it's a hoax. And people are still voting for it. So if your youthful generation is coming through, perhaps they should now become a single issue, a single policy issue voters. Climate change, yes or no? If no, I'm not interested in you. It doesn't matter whether you're Democratic, Republican, or whoever else. I think we need a movement which votes with their feet. And then the needle starts moving.
Absolutely.
Because other than that, as being elegant and being polite and living in a nice
And
hotel
being political.
and being political, it's not going to happen. And this is part of what I want to do with Voices of the Future. And our sustainability segment is a strong segment, but I actually want to shake it at the roots. I can get fancy, smart people speaking on this particular segment, but I want your indigenous people. I want the young negotiators, and I want them to deliver the hard messages and find a way to amplify it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just share some of my experiences from working with farming communities. I mean, that's as real as it can get. They are at the grassroots level, literally, and they understand climate change. And some of the women in those villages have articulated the concept of climate change without knowing the term in such a beautiful way, saying, you know what, we look up into the sky earlier, a couple of years back, and they said, we knew that it's going to rain. Nowadays, we look at it and we don't know if it's going to rain or not. The cloud just passes by. We don't know what's happening. So coming back to the point of who do we want to give a platform to, it's always easy to call someone who's accomplished, someone who's, done a couple of things and has, stars on their shoulder. But I think the real effect of what we do is to highlight real people, those who probably are not exactly celebrities, but who in their own little way are working closely with earth, working closely with nature, without really knowing that they are conserving.
No, absolutely.
So I think that's where what the initiative that you're doing can kind of start here, but then amplify and bring in the voices of real people, because
Indeed. And I the number of times I ask my colleague, whenever he writes the word initiative, to change the word initiative to movement, because I want it to be something that is sustainable in longer term. Now, complimenting you, and because you are authentic in terms of the kind of experiences you have, can you just tell us about your farm and the fact that you go and spend a little bit of your time there, and perhaps that will inspire people into making that as an integral part of our annual calendar.
So a fact about me, which I usually don't put out much, is that I'm a farmer, and that's the role that I hold more closely to my heart than the impact enabler or advisor hat. I think it just happened during and COVID did a lot of bad things, but also did a lot of good things. So I think this is something good that came out for us as a family, where we got a chance to live in the mountains and actually live with the community, because we were locked in there for 4-5 months. So it was not just a vacation where you fly in and fly out. And I actually, realized that these people are just so happy. They genuinely smile. They live from a week to week wages. They have no clue what is future, right? Like, forget future 10 years, 50 years. They don't know how next week is going to look like, how tomorrow is going to look like, but they just so happy and content. And I think for me, that was seeing that day in and day out was, what are we running after? If I'm running after something to come back and relax after I'm 60, what's the point? Like, if I can do it now and work with these people, and that's how the whole eco-farm concept started. We said, okay, let's collaborate with the local community, and from a concept of land stewardship, which means you cannot protect the land, unfortunately, unless you own it. So how can we bring people who are in cities, who want a piece of nature, to give them a meaningful way to be a part of something, and give a very grounded experience, simple farm experiences? How many of the new gen kids have eaten a fruit straight off a tree. They don't know how a carrot plant looks like, but you must be eating carrots every day for your meal. So just taking you literally back to the roots,
Yeah.
back to the earth, and create it as an experiential movement. I'm borrowing and stealing your word there, because I'm a firm believer of experiences. Unless you go, live, see, experience, you are not going to be able to be sensitized towards issues. So we're working on, amplifying that effect and bringing more people into the movement, where just come, experience nature, and you will know what you have to do.
Yeah.
There is no lecturing or awareness session that's needed after that. Just come, see, experience, and you know what you need to do. You know where you can contribute. You will know where you can create the impact. So sometimes it's just about going out there and giving yourself enough time, which unfortunately we don't give ourselves. So
Yes, indeed. And, it's a little bit like trying to learn how to swim from a book. I mean,
Exactly.
You actually need to go into the water to be able to swim. Much as I'd love to keep staying with this particular topic, I'd like to share and request your insights on a couple of other things.
sure.
One of them is I start most of my presentations and stuff with the word trust, truth, and ethics. And the fact that there is a lack of trust and we don't know what truth is, and ethics is a big question mark, whether it's in AI, whether it's in media. And there's this trust gap, this trust deficit that's building up. What, in your opinion, in this sustainable world, do we need to do to bring back the trust and bring back the truth?
I think intrinsically these three elements that you spoke about, without it, sustainability fails. And I think it's easier to highlight it with an example, right? Let's say trust. Someone gives me a bottle of water and tells me this is from the mountains of XYZ. I trust them. Someone says this is ethically sourced cotton. I pay 50% extra to buy it. Ethics, trust, you just trust them. Someone throws out a number or a statistic saying X is the amount of carbon that's got emitted. You believe it as truth. So in today's world, I think all of this are a bit fuzzy. It's very difficult. You trust, you believe there is ethics, but it's, I think, comes back to the point of a personal choice in terms of, do you think from your heart and just trust it? So sustainability won't work unless the trust gap is filled. Otherwise, we can keep speaking about it, we can create frameworks. And personally, I feel if you ask me what is most needed for the future to look better, it's trust.
On the topic of trust, what are organizations and enterprises doing? And also closely linked with compliance, how are the government and regulators organizing that? So the two, how are they connecting?
So I think sustainability and from corporate structure is probably answering and trying to fill that trust gap, because sustainability, as I mentioned earlier, is not CSR. You are reporting on real benchmarks. You're doing disclosure, so you're actually opening up your books and saying, yes, this is my industry and this is how much is my footprint. And you're also trying to say, okay, this is my pathway. I want to get to net zero by 2040, 2050. So I think with disclosures, right, when you start opening up and being as an organization a little more open and vulnerable, saying, yes, this is my industry. We started out on it, we can't shut it down, but this is what we're doing and this is our pathway. I think the trust deficit starts getting bridged. And now sustainability reporting or compliance is not just a good looking report with photographs. It actually has numbers, it's got baselines. It's almost like your balance sheet or a financial report. So you can't just cook up the numbers. It's system generated, it's measured, monitored, tracked. So picking on your point of trust being important and the fact that there is a trust deficit, I would look at this whole structured sustainability approach by companies as one step in the direction of bridging the trust gap and probably creating that future that we would like to see.
I'm working for some companies that are in the circular economy where we have electronic waste and so on. And it was a moment of truth for me because one bank was basically creates about $1 million worth of electronic junk. You can go down to a throwaway place where you can get, let's say, $1 million, or you can go to a circular economy type environment like a BIA or EnviroServe or somebody like that and get $500,000 for that. So actually I asked some board members and CEOs and said, would you fire the procurement manager if it went to the EnviroServe or BIA kind of environment? And it was a very hard question, and I did it in a boardroom because I said, that's the delta. That's the KPI. That's where the rubber hits the road.
Absolutely.
You need to make that call and say,
and that's
yes.
when these investments would work, because there are so many companies in this region which have set up facilities. But again, it comes back to the prosperity part of the sustainability. They're doing good for people, they're doing good for the planet. But if they are not supported economically, that concept is going to fail because you can't eternally keep it running. So that's where it comes down to.
So from a hard business point of view, that's why I said my second one, the sustainability needs to be very profitable, and I actually stand in front of boards and teams and so on and demonstrate how we can create value in sustainable things. And every single industry.
It's not an expense; it's an investment, and that's, I think, that's the
it
message.
It even goes beyond. It's actually value creation. And you can start getting more returns. And there are value creations which are tangible, and there are intangible ones also in terms of brand, in terms of better quality of people, etc., etc. So I think that's something new that we need to embrace. You as an expert, maybe perhaps are doing this. Now, as we're in the COP year here in Dubai, what are the big things that are happening, and what are your big things that you're expecting?
I think one thing that COP has done, not just the COP28 in UAE, but the momentum that COPs have gained, and the conference of parties, it's meant for parties, which are the countries, but the amount of public engagement and corporate engagement that it's been able to gain in the past few years, I think that's what has brought climate change to a mainline discussion, whether the discussion is negative or positive, irrespective, but the fact that it's been given that spotlight, right? Today, everyone is curious about COP, which is good, because when you show up there, you get a sense that the climate community is massive. There are so many people trying to do something, small bits and bobs probably in their own ways. So I'd say what really comes out of the COP, we need to wait and see, and we hope that the whole loss and damage fund that was intended to be created gets done, so that the countries which are suffering from climate change get help instantly. They don't have to wait for a long period of time to, get that support. And I mean, as long as topics like adaptation, resilience, which never really were used earlier, mitigation, which where alien topics are now coming into mainstream. Youngsters are very curious on, okay, what does this mean? What can we do in it? So I think it's becoming a movement from being an event. And I think that's, for me, is a positive outcome, but it shouldn't end up being an event.
Indeed. And I mean, climate literacy and climate action that comes out of that becomes a key element. Looking forward into the future, your 85th birthday, and we all come to celebrate. And we're celebrating your 85th birthday. What are we celebrating? Where are you? How do you visualize yourself?
I think at the end of the day, in a very personal space, someone who's got no guilt, no regret, and just being happy, I would say. Simple things, and hopefully the real impact journey, not as an entity, but as a concept, has really created impact. I would not look at it in terms of scale or size, but in terms of meaningful interventions. If I can look back and count 10 things where I've created real impact, I think I'd be a happy person. And yeah, and just hope to be living in the present while creating the future. So that's what you would see when you are on my 85th.
That's amazing. And one last question, and that is that if you were to leave a little message in a bottle and you write a small note, and we find the bottle, let's say, in 7, 8, 10 years, what will that message say? What would you like it to read with today's knowledge? And somebody will pick it up and say, Aruna, 6, 7, 8 years ago, she was a voice of the future and she projected that. What would that read?
It would just say, smile and be the light.
Be the light. Okay. On a happier note, you are the light for us. You're shining the light of sustainability, of all of the important issues around climate literacy with companies, government organizations. Aruna, you're an absolute treasure. Thank you very much indeed for being here with us.
Thank you for those kind words.
No, you are. I mean, somebody has to do it, and somebody has to take the mantle and put the stake in the ground and say, we are doing it. And you started early, so therefore I have even more respect for you. If it's fashionable, if you'd done it 2 years ago, it's fashionable. You did it 12 years ago, you did it from there. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be an associate and hopefully a good
My
friend.
pleasure.
And we'll do lots of wonderful things together.
Definitely.
Aruna, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Appreciate it. Good.